And welcome everyone to another episode of the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 47. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you're joining us for the first time, basically this is the Shitlord Preachers podcast where myself, Amos Joseph here in Minnesota, and my friend Brook Potter, who is joining us from the country,
UK,
the UK, yes.
which is actually 4 countries in one. So we're better than you.
Exactly. Some would say 50 countries over here in one is pretty cool too.
Yeah, but y'all call them states.
Anyways, yeah, it is where my friend Brooke and I, both former preachers, now reformed shitlords. Basically, we come together, we talk about anything from social, political issues, and pretty much anything in between all of that. But how's it going today, Brooke?
It's going all right. I think we are coming to the end of real winter as opposed to fake spring has just come to an end. So I think we got probably a week of that going on out here. It's been a rough week though. I mean, I've had some personal stuff going on that we could probably touch on a little bit. And for our audience, I was sleeping pretty much the whole afternoon. Sweet sleep. And that's why we were late. But yeah, Amos was equally guilty. So back to you, Amos.
Yeah, I was sleeping as well. I guess we'll get into that then.
Yeah. What's going on? Why are we so sleepy?
Well, we got a couple things going on. First of all, the job that I was working at that I talked about that involved traveling and the like.
Hookers.
Exactly. All the traveling and work that I did. Basically, it took me away from the stream for a little bit there. Got let go from that, unfortunately. So that kind of sucked. But already got things going, got things rolling. Just kind of taking the weekend off. But with that, it's, the job did require me to kind of wake up early and all this stuff, and was very strict on the schedule. So I just kind of let loose, we'll say. And woke up at noon and then got a message from you. Hey, are we doing a stream? I'm like, oh.
What did you do last night? Were there hookers?
No, there were no hookers last night. No,
just strippers then.
Exactly. No,
strippers and coke. You got to take a shot. No. Strippers ass.
Unfortunately, not a very not eventful last couple days, except for Friday.
Ooh. Bound chicky bound. What happened on Friday, Amos? Not to give too much away.
Exactly. Had someone over to this place. So this place is as clean as can be.
Did she come? Was she a Mexican maid? Is that why?
No.
Did she get past the wall?
No. Anyways, no. Just had a person over. We had dinner. We watched a movie, and that was that.
You Netflixed and chilled with.
We did. We
did. Oh my! Hold on a minute here.
It was Amazon though.
Oh, Amazon and chilled. It doesn't roll off the tongue as nicely.
You would call it I guess, I don't know, Amazon Prime and Pump. I don't know.
Prime and Pump, yeah, possibly. But yeah. So you had a chick over.
Yes.
Do you have a nickname for the chick? We'll call her not a university chick.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So yeah. Wow, how did this happen, Amos?
Dating apps went well. Basically was, obviously, practicing a lot of just what I've learned about talking to women, changing my attitude towards things. And it's a good thing too. Red pills definitely helped me kind of really be a lot more confident about myself, about the way I approach, the way I talk. And believe it or not, contrary to a lot of people who've basically thought like the way Like what red pill they think is kind of like, fake it till you make it. But really, for me, it's been a complete change of like mindset.
I see.
You
Did you
just
go all
what?
mode 1 on her ass?
There was enough. There's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that. Okay. Do you want to explain to our unbeknownst listeners what mode 1 is?
So Alan Roger Curry wrote a book called Mode 1. Basically, it explains a type of approach when it comes to dating, which is very upfront and bold, I'll say. It can be very explicit in basically how you're describing. So I actually had a conversation with a couple guys about this. Just talking about like, I've known guys that a couple guys I know that have done this to some degree, but it's just basically being very direct and explicit with your intentions. We'll just say it to that. We'll even just say, sexual, just basically saying like, I'm gonna fuck your
I
brains
want to
out.
take you to Pound Town.
Yeah, and it's a lot of, it's a show of, it's a demonstration of being very bold, saying exactly what you want. And you don't really find too many guys that express that nowadays. They don't really. The question I got from people was, there was someone I was talking to, and the question I got was, well, how do you bridge between, like, what's the line between creepy and bold? I said, well, think of a house. Now, there's obviously tact in this. You're not just, clubbing a woman over the head, kind of. We'll just say
And dragging her back to your cave.
Right. I always use that as the example of too alpha, like violently alpha. There's a lot of this, people think alpha is just, oh, you're just a dick all the time. It's like, no. You like, we're still humans. We're still very evolved. There is a time and place for being dominant and alpha, and there's a time and place for being comforting and gentle. But it's very much like just imagine, the warrior busts through the front door. I'm here for this, versus the creepy guy knocking at the door. Hey, I think you're really pretty. Can I come in?
Like the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah. But it's just,
right.
but then the girl kind of, like, what does he want? Why is he here? Whereas it's like, oh, he's here. He's bold. What is he going to do to me? Kind of thing.
Have you read the book Mode 1? I haven't, but
to be fully honest, I haven't read the book. I've only really learned about the approach through others. I have the book, and I probably should listen to it.
Yeah,
but I've somehow been practicing it without actually reading the book, because it's a very it's a very basic kind of. I think, at least. It's probably more in depth in the book.
Yeah,
but I've kind of gotten a lot of at least the basics down. I've talked to guys who've read the book, and I tell them what I've said and what I do, and they're like, "You ever read the book?" Yeah. Oh, well.
So, I guess this is a good time to plug where you're meeting these guys. I guess you could give them a shout out.
Oh, no. It's actually not those guys.
It's not those guys. There are more guys.
There are other guys that I talked to. I've told you.
Even better.
Yeah. So, all, of course, out of state. There is, of course, always Richard Cooper's men's group. I've talked about some things there, but honestly haven't been as active there. But that's another thing.
Is it still worth the $9.90? Well, no, it's not $25 a month.
It depends. There is a lot of good stuff in there. For where I am, I'm probably not seeing as much so far.
Yeah, because you understand what needs to be done. I think you have a very clear understanding of the issues in your own life, and you're tackling them.
Yeah,
your head on.
Yeah. My goals, my ambitions.
Correct.
Anyways, Excuse me.
So back to not a university student. Is she cute?
I'd say so. I mean, you've seen you know what she looks like.
I know what she, but for the audience.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, I think she's cute.
Does she have a rack on her that makes you want to put your face between her tits and go brisky?
Man, we are just iTunes is explicit option. Yep, we're going for it.
Well, I didn't ask if you put your dick in her ass. I mean,
God damn it.
Or her mouth. That would suck.
I figured wouldn't be too bad.
I'm just saying, paint us a picture for the listeners. Is she a nice, pretty girl? She's got some curves on her. You know, you got something to work with. Or is she a spinning top? You know,
she's shorter than me. Dark hair, fair skin. Bigger, but I don't consider to be like fat or by any means.
She's thick.
Yeah. I mean, so am I. So, I mean, there's obviously I've thought, we've talked about that too, because she's seen some of my posts about like, fat chicks and such. I'd explain all that. Like, I'm like, no. That's like the culture is what I have a real problem with. I have no real problem with like people who are maybe of a certain size. I mean, granted, there is a line, I think, a pretty clear line between, and it's more a mental thing. People who are fat and don't care and really ride the body positivity, fat acceptance train, versus those who are maybe just bigger, but they're fully aware of what they are, and doing whatever they're doing. It's, I mean, they're not on Instagram as a model eating cake
and drinking 2 liters of soda.
Yeah, and saying, be yourself, be happy with your body. It's like
trying to inspire young women or whatever the fuck they're doing.
Yeah. So no, I explained all of that. And that's another very attractive quality about her, is the fact that she's very aware of just having differences of opinion, talking about different things. She even got really interested in hearing, what is libertarianism? So I started like touching on different things.
Ooh, and that's a keeper. Did you say the mantra, taxation is theft?
Yeah.
And she responded.
She said, oh, that's an interesting perspective. She's like, yeah.
That's a keeper.
I said, yeah. I mean, I've started to see like just the basic explanation of the, when you have, you work, you earn your wages. And that's between, you and your employer. Why does someone else own that? I said, granted, so people want to say services and all that. It's like, okay, there are services that I get, I can understand to a point. Like, yeah, you want to like roads and all this, the roads argument. It's like, okay, I can understand that. I said, but there are things that the government does its money with that you don't agree with. And there are some things that the government does money with that the right, she's identifies more on the left. And she was like,
wrong with the left.
Exactly.
In that respect. Sure.
Actually, she started to actually agree. She was sounding very Dave Rubin-esque.
Right. Classical liberal.
Yeah. She was like, yeah, the left is just, you got to be this, you got to be that. She started like having a little bit of a rant, and I'm like, okay, she gets it. So, yeah. So then, of course, I'm telling her like, yeah, and there's things that the right doesn't like that the government does the money with. I said, but so why does that happen? Why do we have to put up with that? Why is that ethical? How is that not theft? How is that okay? You get thrown in jail, and people say, well, you live here and this and that. So she started to kind of understand some of that. I mean, we didn't talk too much further beyond that. We talked a lot more about kind of my background. And there was a funny little bit like the fact that we kind of have some, in terms of personal life, we have some things that are in common, and kind of had a little joke like, gee, it seems like I have a type. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I mean, so yeah, you had her over to your place. Was this a first date?
Yeah.
Awesome. Is there going to be a second date?
Yeah. We're already, I mean, we're already talking about, um, with, yeah, her coming here again. And this time it's probably not going to be me making dinner. She said she wants to bring something over. So,
Is she the dinner? Is she going to grab the sausage?
We don't know yet. So no, I mean, then I'll probably be able to, I'll put a little more on my end into like maybe because we just had a very simple type of dinner, just good food, and it was like water, you know. And now I'm like, okay, maybe I should get something like wine or something to drink,
Oh, you
and
didn't? Oh, yeah.
an actual like dessert, like some sort of something sweet or something.
Yeah, yeah. Not bad for first run though. I mean, everybody needs the experience. That's great, man. That's good news.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. And I told her, I mean, we touched on it. We didn't get like, all like our past, but it was kind of like, yeah, she's younger than me and she hasn't had a date in a while. I told her I haven't had a date in a while. So,
Did you keep to the iron rules of Tomasi and never express how many ex-girlfriends you've had?
right. I just said, when was the last time? I didn't say how many.
Right. Did she say how many she had?
No, she didn't either.
All right. Fair enough. That sounds really good, man, Amos. Good job, man.
But anyways, what else is going on, Brooke?
Well, I'm on the completely other side of the spectrum. Me and my, one of the girls I've been seeing out here, it's ending. It looks like, it's just become an impasse. It's not that it wasn't good for while it was there. It was, she has an issue that for me is a red line, and for me, I mean, it's a red flag, as I say, but I have it as a line in the sand that I don't particularly want to be with somebody who does this. I have a history with people who've done this. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of damage. I've seen a lot of lying and all that kind of thing. And it's an addiction, not a drug addiction, but it is an addiction. And we've been together for, I don't know, almost 2 years, I think. And yeah,
we've talked about this, so we don't have to go too much into it.
Correct. But yeah, it's been tough, which is probably why I've been sleeping so much, just trying to get through this phase. But yeah, she's a trooper, and we're gonna meet up one more time, most likely for closure. And yeah, so I'm kind of looking at that, and this is not the first time that I've had to do something like this. I had another young lady that I was, pretty much engaged to, and again, great in so many ways, but she had a very, but she was jealous. She was like a psychopath jealous. It was really out of control. And again, I had to make the choice of kind of ending the relationship, because if you don't have trust, you really don't have anything else.
Right.
And that was one of the hardest things I had to do. So I actually just put the engagement ring and everything. I brought it with me to the UK, and I have it in a jewelry shop, and they're trying to sell it off so I can, recoup at least a third of what I spent for it. But yeah. And I mean, I think this really speaks to it. The whole red pill thing about not ignoring the warning signs, really vetting the person. So that book that I think you're reading and I've read, No More Mr. Nice Guy and The Tactical Guide to Women. Yeah, we know the statistics on marriage. We know that it's not great. We know it's 50% of marriages end in divorce, 70% of divorces initiated by women. Out here in the UK, divorce rape is a very, very common thing. In fact, I was speaking to a fellow Trinidadian who's out here, a very successful lady, and she's asking me about all this. And I said, well, she said, whatever you do, do not marry an English girl, because it's just, they're very entitled and all these other types of things, and they're going to wring you through the cleaners. So we know the risks. So that's why it's so important to really vet, not to ignore the serious issues. And with this, my lady that I had, It would have been so easy because it really was a very simple relationship, very easy. We got along great, great sense of humor. And I could have just ignored this red area of her life. Right. But the fact was she wasn't dealing with it. Mm-hmm. She was more focused on trying to get me to marry her. And guys, that's a red flag. If a woman wants to get married, she usually doesn't really care who to. She will look past anything to accomplish her goal.
The idea of getting married itself is fine. It's more so the pushing, right? The real.
Yeah, it's a woman who pursues that. They tend to overlook a lot of personal flaws. So I mean, okay, so I'm not I am her most recent, but her previous boyfriends have been terrible, and she's allowed herself to have some very terrible experiences because she's pushing to that goal. She's like, I just need to get across the finish line. And I mean, fortunately for us, that's not as much pressure for us. So we can take our time and we can, kind of wait it out. And that's really what it came down to. It's like, I could stay in this relationship for like another year, but I know that I'm not going to take it to the next level. I'm not going to ask her to marry me. I'm not going to, put myself in that position. So while I'm getting all of this great stuff and the sex is great and all that other stuff, I got to be like, I'm wasting her time and I'm wasting my time. I've got to respect myself enough to say, okay, look, I've got to cut it off. I've got to put an end to it. And that's what I reached. And that's very difficult for her to understand because it was going so well, but it's about, we don't really have a future. So that's kind of where I'm at presently. It's been a couple weeks. Yeah. So I'm on the other end of the spectrum, Amos. I'm, I got to get the bros out, I got to get back in the gym, I got to snort some coke or something, get some strippers and hookers out, Nah, I'm just kidding, guys. I don't do any of that stuff, but
as far as I know, at least.
Yeah, only in Amsterdam, apparently. Yeah. But yeah. I think getting back to the gym is going to be good for me. I haven't gone back since I've made the return. Mm-hmm. One, the jet lag. I'm dealing with this. It's a lot of pressure. And just honestly, I'm not waking up in the morning to do it. So I think I've got a week of this kind of, moping around a little bit, but then I got to pick myself up and be, okay, let's get some shit done, and get back to work.
Right. Well, that's good. Huh.
Yeah. It is what it is. So anybody out there who's got some nice English or American girls they could introduce me to, I just leave a comment below. Just leave me her number. I'll take it from there. And if she's got a good sister as well, that's always a good backup plan.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. A lot of the stuff going on with us here, but we weren't too sure what topics we were going to get into. Have you heard about well, I sent you that video of Theresa May. What did you think of that, by the way?
That was very funny. That was the SNL Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, they did it. And then Kit Harington, the guy who plays Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, was the host last night. And a whole bunch of really funny skits came out of it. Surprisingly, Saturday Night Live being funny.
Who would have thought? They haven't been funny since the early 90s.
Well, it was a lot. I mean, it's pretty light compared to some of the stuff. I posted I don't know if you've probably seen this. Dan Aykroyd, the actor.
Yeah, of course.
There was the video, the clip. It was called Point Counterpoint, and he basically the famous line is, "Jane, you ignorant slut."
Yeah, I think I remember that.
It was talking about I think they were discussing the issue of divorce and how a mother actually no wait, it was a woman who was a couple that was living together, and basically they split up, and basically the woman was going to sue the guy for a certain amount of money, and kind of common law marriage stuff. Anyways, basically the woman is giving this very, actually it wasn't radical feminism like today. It was a very feminist view of kind of hey, she deserves her bit. She supported him and all this. She deserves a part of his, his wealth, because she's supported him for such a long time, but they never actually got married. And basically Dan Aykroyd just goes, "Jane, you ignorant slut." And then the whole crowd starts busting out laughing, of course. And I'm like, see, you could make like humor like that. And it's not like, oh, everyone's laughing like, oh, she's an ignorant slut. The laugh is more so the shock value. Like, oh my gosh, did he just say that? Like, it's so over the top. And people don't understand that nowadays. That's the context. The context was shock and just getting people to go, oh my, what? Like, that's the whole, like, early Saturday Night Live was a lot of violence and a lot of just very explosive kind of comedy, shock and everything. Chris Farley breaking everything on the set.
Yes.
I think the people who made the set said they had to really be careful because they had no idea what Chris Farley was going to break during a skit.
Yeah. I mean, I knew it in the back in the day. Dan Aykroyd. Did Eddie Murphy had a start on there? I can't remember if he did.
He did. Yeah, he was like really young when he was on the first episode.
Yeah. I remember some of those really early episodes. Probably because we didn't get NBC in Trinidad until we got cable. But I had a friend of mine. He lived in New York, and he would bring recordings of Saturday night skits on like VHS tapes, and we'd watch it while we were, playing video games and everything else, right? So we'll have that on as well. And there was some very funny stuff, very, very funny stuff. The Aykroyd stuff, Chevy Chase, he had a start out there. Who's another big one? But as you said, Chris Farley, David Foley, I think he had a thing.
I mean, you even had some very recent greats. You had a lot of, you had Will Ferrell. Was pretty good.
Never liked Will Ferrell, but yeah, he got big off it.
There was Will Ferrell. I mean, there's some. They had some really good guests. So Jim Carrey was pretty good with it, just because he with when he did In Living Color, that kind of translated over.
Yes, I remember him in Living Color. That was really good.
But he's been on Saturday Night Live on some interesting skits. There was also I'm thinking more recent, because there are people that made it big off of there, but just weren't really that fun. Like Jimmy Fallon, unfortunately, just wasn't. I mean, he was from Saturday Night Live, but he was never like huge,
right?
But because of that, because that's like pretty good credentials even nowadays, he
he has his own talk show now, right?
Yeah, he's taken over one of the late night shows. Who else? Chris Kattan was all right. Norm Macdonald was really good.
Really? He was on that. Excellent.
So he did Weekend Update, and that's actually how he got fired. So and this is what he would do back then. So he did Weekend Update, and he would just do some of the funniest stuff it made no sense, so he'd say some bit, he'd be like, and other news, this is going on here and that's going on there, and that is what's going on there. And he'd look at the other camera, or so the Germans would like us to believe. And he'd do that like multiple times over a few weeks, and people would just, what made no sense, but his timing was, that was his comedy, was the timing would be off, and he would just drop something random.
Right.
He got in trouble because he was really pushing the OJ Simpson thing.
Mm-hmm.
He kept making jokes like, unless I'm mistaken, murder was still legal. Like, he would just throw in jokes like that, like basically holding his stance, like OJ's, very much guilty.
Right.
Excuse me. And Saturday Night Live fired him for that.
I see. Okay.
3 years later, he's a host, and he goes on there and he goes, now some of I was here 3 years. I was fired from here 3 years ago, and now I'm back. So that tells me one of two things: either, I've gotten really good, or this show sucks.
There you go.
And that was, he was, yeah. And then, of course, recently he got into some trouble because people, of course, jumped the gun on some comment he made about Louis C.K., the comedian, and Roseanne Barr, that whole thing. He knew both of them very well, and he made some comments to kind of really in their defense, but not to defend what they were doing. But people kind of like jumped the gun, and he then unfortunately he did the thing you just don't want to do, is going on talk shows to apologize.
Real, yeah, right.
So, anyways, yeah, that was what Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, Donovan Gavin in the chat is saying Jimmy Fallon was only funny when he was trying not to laugh at the other actors being funny.
Yeah, I mean, now it's the meme. The meme is, Jimmy Fallon is laughing at every guest that he has on.
He's not a funny man. He's a funny person to look at. He's not a comedian. Well, I mean, I never particularly found him funny. But then again,
he's
Will
like
Ferrell, I don't find funny either. That's slapstick for me.
Right. Like he's like I mean, Jimmy Fallon is like watching a Let's Play person.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's accurate.
You're more watching the character than watching the actual game. But he's like, but it's a Let's Laugh. It's just
I mean, what I don't get about this late night culture. Who's the other guy who's doing the talk show? He was on the Man Show. I don't know if you remember the Man Show. Jimmy Kimmel, right? Now I remember watching the Man Show. I think that was on Comedy Central, maybe mid 90s. It was him and Carell, I think. So there was another gentleman on, and it was all about guy stuff. Like it was just like masculinity gone crazy, right? It was like Tim Allen from Tool Time on steroids. And they had girls on trampolines. They had like a guy who's on the piano and he's singing a bunch of dirty songs, but he could drink an entire pitcher of beer or 2 pitchers of beer in like 2 quick shots and stuff. So, I mean, it was just ridiculous, right? It was just over the top. And they like one of the stunts he did, I think he went out to Vegas and somehow he managed to like get his hands or something on some girl's chest or some shit like that. I can't remember. But it was all these kind of stunts, right? Now he gets a complete pass for what would probably be considered today toxic masculinity, right? Despite all of the crap that he has done. And then you get somebody like Roseanne Barr, who, she made her one comment out of context that about the actress that would look like somebody from the Planet of the Apes or something. I can't remember her exact comment. Mm-hmm. And she's crucified on her show. And this kind of double standard, this kind of hypocrisy, it's really getting tired. I mean, you're seeing the same thing with Joe Biden and has he announced? Is he running? Is that official now? I don't know. I haven't been following it.
Who, Biden?
Biden. Is he in?
Yes.
He has announced.
I believe so.
Right. So as the memes will have it, he just loves the smell of people's hair, right? So, and I'm sure you've seen all the memes where he's like, crawling up behind people and like speaking into their ears and really kind of creepy Sam sort of thing,
Here's where it really took off and went to the next level. Trump tweets a video of Biden it was an animated like video of Biden sneaking up on Biden.
I saw that.
And Trump tweeted that out. And people were like, trolling Chief or some shit. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's like the CNN, the CNN gif times like 10. Just yes. He went further,
Yes. Yeah, I saw that. Like Biden is there talking, and you see like the figure passes behind him, kind of stealthily.
The hands,
and then it comes up, and the hands come out.
Yeah, the hands come on his shoulder, and he kind of, you hear sniffing in the background.
Yeah. I mean, this is it, right? And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there have been a couple of sexual assault. Well, I mean, sexual assault is such a vague term. So, but there have been sexual assault. It really probably was harassment, but it's being classified as assault. A couple ladies have come forward and kind of said this, have they not?
No, but the videos, I mean, there's a whole archive of videos of just just people extremely uncomfortable with what he's doing.
Right.
little girls, older girls, just underage girls, of age women,
Even his
all like,
wife. His wife said that his whatever that thing he's doing creeped her out when he did it, right? And she was on some talk show, about it. So yeah, he has had some sexual misconduct allegations, and he's responding to that. What happened to all this believe all women stuff? Men are guilty until proven innocent. I mean, has feminism abandoned that just because it's a guy on the left? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Hypocrisy. Yeah, well, obviously.
but yeah. I saw our friends over at Being Libertarian posted a picture, a meme. I don't know if you saw it. So it was like a presidential campaign shirt, but it was 2 presidential campaigns. So the top half was blue with white letters saying Biden 2020, and it had two cartoon hands like groping around the chest.
All right, okay.
And then the bottom half of the shirt was red, said Trump 2020, with
grab him by the pussy.
One hand coming up the crotch kind of thing.
No, I didn't see that. That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Yeah, so definitely go check that out, everyone, on Facebook. Being Libertarian, they posted that meme and it's pretty good. But yeah, it's just that whole thing comes through, and yeah, the left is of course running to the defense of Biden, and the right is, rightly so, is calling out that kind of hypocrisy. Like, really, you guys were all like going nuts over Kavanaugh. And here comes Biden, even high, in some cases a more important, higher office, and just nope, not gonna touch it.
Yeah. I mean, it is.
He's an old man, or so, I don't know what they're using for excuses.
I haven't really been following it. I mean, we've seen this same hypocrisy when it came to Milo Yiannopoulos and his comments, I think, on Joe Rogan's podcast about, when he was molested by a priest. He almost kind of said it was a good experience.
Well, he tried to connect how, like, within gay culture, there is a lot of coming of age sort of things that happen among gay men, where you basically are engaged in a situation with an older man. Some cases you could be 17 and the older man's like 30. Granted, I think that's statutory rape.
I think in Yiannopoulos he was 14.
Yeah, it was just things like that, and some editing was done to basically make it look like he was, an apologist or a defender of pedophilia, and he said, no. It's just, in my experience, this is what I went through, and that, he goes, what people don't understand is that is a very common thing among gay men, is the sort of coming of age thing of a very young man with an older man.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, obviously I've never had that experience, so I don't know. But going back to the hypocrisy thing, of course, Milo was raked over the coals for that entire thing. George Takei of Star Trek fame had a very similar story.
Oh, right.
Right. He was at summer camp or something. Yeah, he was on Howard Stern, and he was at summer camp or something. I mean, I can't remember.
I mean, they straight up said, "Well, you didn't like do anything with these kids, did you?" And then he's like,
yeah. It's like, that would shock you. Oh my,
He's like, "Hello, boner." I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and he gets a left pass. He just, and I'll bring up one more, because I remember when this whole thing was going. And look, I'm against this. Left, right, whoever you are, if you're fiddling with kids, right, fuck you, right? You
right,
totally. But the left pass on this is ridiculous. So another example of this, this same kind of nonsense, Bill Maher. There was an incident where it wasn't with gay kids, but it was a teacher was having sex with a maybe 14-year-old boy. And back then it wasn't his Bill Maher talk show. It was a different show where they had like a panel discussion. And
it
I
was
can't
called
remember what it was.
it was called Politically Correct or something.
Politically Incorrect. That was it. That was the show.
Yeah, that was when PC culture was like starting, and he had a show to basically like tackle that.
Correct. So he started, and he brought up this issue about, I think the teacher was 21, the boy was 14, and I'm, I may have those ages wrong. And he introduced it like, what's wrong with love? Like, everybody's calling this statutory rape, but I call it two people who've fallen in love. And he gets a left pass. Like, that's totally fine.
I saw a video a while back. It was a guy basically talking about he's like, hey, he's this kid. He was a kid who was caught in a scandal with a female teacher, and he said, I'm a guy. I'm supposed to be like, I'm into girls, right? Yeah, of course. So it's the video is kind of like him basically running down the line of thinking. I'm a guy. She's a hot teacher. I should be okay with this. I should be okay with this. So it's showing like the double standard of if it's a guy, if it's a kid, it's a little boy, it's like, good for you, lucky you. And there is some, I mean, just, when you're a young boy and you've got the hormones and you get to sleep with there's some kids that's probably like, yeah, lucky you got to be with the teacher. But there are very clear instances though, where the teacher is clearly predatory and it is rape upon the boy. And so this guy is basically, here he is, he's a fully grown adult, and he's just like, everyone came at me saying, dude, she's hot. Why are you making this a big deal? Why is this such a problem? And basically at the end of the video, he's busting out, like almost crying, like, I'm supposed to be okay with this because I'm the guy.
Yeah.
And it just sheds light on the fact that there are going to be those times where the standard has to be upheld that it is rape regardless.
I mean, it's exactly what you pointed out there. Emotionally, he was not ready to handle all of that, and I get that. Which is probably why we don't give these kids the right to vote, and we try to protect them from sexual predatory stuff. And I mean, to be fair, if he was sleeping with another 14-year-old, right? I don't know what the laws are on that. Some states have like Romeo and Juliet laws, kind of, but like if they're both underage.
Romeo and Juliet laws are specifically applying to age gaps. So I think here in Minnesota, there's actually some rule basically where I think you have to be within 2 years of a part of each other. So if she's 17 and you're 19, that's passing.
Yeah, it's something like that. Or like if you were both like, if he was 15 and she was 14 and he becomes 18, but you've been together since you're below that threshold.
There is that too. There has to be something to kind of, not like, prove, but there is something you have to kind of show, like you've been dating for a longer time, that both of you were minors when you were dating.
Correct.
So the laws do allow for like young love, but what they do not allow for is obviously just clear gaps.
Exploitation of kids.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be out, there were teachers at my school that all the guys wanted to totally bang. But, but it's, if that, but we're fucking high schoolers.
Yeah.
We don't know any better. What if, if that teacher was just into like one of the kids who maybe wasn't as, outward about their straightness, we'll say. Anyways, yeah, it's a tricky thing because, yeah, the double standard is definitely there. Yeah, it's a fucking mess, I'd say.
I mean, I think this is, for some reason, the left seems to want to revel in the sexualization of kids. I don't know what this fascination is.
The Desmond is amazing, that kid.
Right. That's the young boy.
The young drag queen.
drag queen. He was on some talk show. And and then he's been seen in like these gay clubs with gay men giving him
throwing money at
money
him,
to take his I don't know if he's taking his clothes off or not. I don't know. I can't remember.
doing dances.
Right. Illicit. And I do not know. I mean, the depths of perversion that sexual depravity comes from. I don't know why it's on the left. It seems to be on the left because you hear about these kinds of things in Hollywood. You hear about it, in some depths of politics and stuff like that. And even, I mean, again, Milo was talking about, yeah, you go to some of these, big producers in Hollywood, and they've got some very young boys who are just like ornaments in their house. It's disgusting, and I don't know why they're trying to normalize it. I mean, did you remember an organization called NAMBLA, the National Association of Man Boy Love? South Park did a they took a shot at them with this whole NAMBLA thing. But that was like a thing. That was like a thing that actually existed. I don't know. I think it eventually got cracked down upon, and I mean, it just moved it underground, obviously. But
I mean, I've heard like crazy conspiracy theories with what highly powerful individuals do with children and such. Which
is this an Alex Jones moment?
No. Not. I'm not talking interdimensional child molesters. I'm talking like basically people of high political office engaging in different things, which doesn't seem that far out of the realm of possibility. And from what I've seen, I mean, there was no clear indication of whether it's a left or right thing, but the fact that the left is so outwardly, so overt about it is very, very concerning. I mean, you've seen like some of these LGBT posts or memes. They'll show like it's like they use some sort of a representation, so it'll show like a picture like of the typical like male and female symbols, like the bathroom logos of like man or female. So it'll show like man woman, woman woman, man man, or like, and then it'll start showing like the spectrum of like different genders, like non-binary. Okay, and then it'll show like and then it showed like a polyamorous, so like 3 men 3 women, something like that, or 1 guy 2 girls, anything, all this stuff. And then like randomly they'll just slip in where like different ages. And there have been some that have shown like 14-year-old child, 20-some-year-old adult, or 30-some-year-old adult. And people slip that in, and people basically like, just the meme is now they pull that and then they circle the big thing like, the fuck is this shit? Like, right? It's important. The internet is like calling it out, like, this is bullshit. Like, this is not. And then there's of course the debate now is are pedophilic individuals included in the LGBT community? The ever growing LGBT community of just more genders, more sexualities. Does it include pedophilia? And there's a lot of them are saying no. Pedophilia is not a sexuality. They believe it's a disorder. It's wrong. It's not supposed to be. We talked about a while back. The virtuous pedophile?
Right.
That was really fucked up. Kind of
I had a friend. He did a video on that, and yeah. I mean, he doesn't really want to be associated with that anymore. Apparently, got a lot of heat for it. But so the virtuous pedophile is somebody who's attracted to kids, but they don't do anything.
Yeah,
they look at the menu, but they don't order anything. Sort of thinking.
That's just.
I don't get it.
And then of course there's what is it? Oh, so then you had Twitter started having a lot of this. You had what was called the no map, non-offensive, minor attracted persons.
Right, the no maps. Okay, I heard of this.
Our Shoe on Head did a whole thing on this, basically pointing out like, how is it that Twitter allows for basically these whole communities of people saying, basically addressing how their maps minor attracted persons. That's like the PC term for pedophile.
Right. Right.
To just talk openly about, watching kids at schools. There's even some shit now with YouTube now. YouTube is there's like so YouTube tried to really crack down on like commenters on videos
Right.
because there was a rise in problems where like basically like parents put videos up of their kids, to kind of show family. So there are parents putting up videos of their kids like doing gymnastics or just certain
In a
things that
school play or sports or something.
it
Sure.
might make them seem a certain way. And so pedophiles started like exchanging like code words in these videos
Really?
in the comments. So YouTube kind of dropped the ball on some of these big time.
Wow.
Their algorithms aren't catching these videos that are just blatantly fucked up stuff. So
Pedal
it's
porn.
yeah, stuff like where they've edited it, they've basically created means to circumvent all the algorithms to find, and then kids are watching it, they're watching YouTube Kids and something pops up that kids aren't supposed to see.
Right, right. I mean, I've seen this garbage about how YouTube wants people to take responsibility for their comments. I don't know if you've seen the push for that.
Not sure. Tell me about that.
Yeah, no, that's basically what it is that, because of whatever crackdown and stuff, and people are sending these coded messages in videos, YouTube wants to penalize the creator for the comments that are taking place in their videos. And I mean, you can't be more ridiculous than that because I mean, I think we all kind of assume that YouTube is very left leaning in that respect. But
Right,
that guilt by association sort of nonsense bullshit. Like I have people commenting on this thing that I've never on my videos that I've never met. I have no idea who they are. Their avatar is a dog eating a cake or something. And they're saying some very vile things, like wishing ill upon me and hoping I get hit with a garbage truck and speaking death upon me. Am I responsible for that?
No.
But YouTube is trying to push that as the creators have to take more responsibility in filtering the comments. And I mean, it's just going to result in comments being turned off, right? So, if that ever actually becomes a thing. But this is it. People will find a way,
The times we live in, Brook.
I think in a couple years when this I don't know, whatever generation of feminists die off or consumed by their cats, I think the conservatives are going to be what's left, right? Because they're probably the ones that are actually breeding, right? And actually having kids and, all this other kinds of stuff. So I think in a couple years, 10, maybe 20 years, if we're still around, let's talk about it. We're going to look back on this period as this is like the crazy humanity period in the West. Like this was the where we lost the plot. We had too much to smoke. We drank too much for like a couple decades. And then we're going to kind of put our hands back on the wheel. Right.
Yeah. There was, I've talked about this with people, the clear problems with how the left in the West is just what it's doing. We're having this crazy, as Jordan Peterson calls it, the neo-Marxist postmodernism. The crazy SJW nonsense, and even when I talk to people in their their 40s and beyond, they're like, yeah, we've had some crazy times, we've had some weird periods, but never like this.
No, this is the reason this is so ridiculous is because it started in the universities, and those university students are now in places of power.
That's the thing is it's always there's always been like social ebbs and flows. You get a little left, you get a little right, you get a little here and there, and you get some leftists going a little cuckoo, you get some right wingers going a little cuckoo. But now it's like it's not just the social aspect, there's political backing to it. There's
There's corporate backing to it.
Yeah, corporate, social, political, and there's currency being exchanged in this, of people basically trying to take people down, people trying to censor people, and it's kind of like you said, you really just got to ride it out until the backlash kind of takes place. I've told people the concerns I have, and I'm not talking specifically because we talked about kind of the incel problem. But one thing I am concerned about is, so like the conservatives tend to be very, their right-wing beliefs tend to indicate certain things. So they're very patriotic, but also other things. They're very conservative in their family values. They might have a higher frequency of basically tolerance of nonsense and manners. Basically, is the way I could see it. Decency.
Yes.
Also, they have all the guns. Here's why that's important. You have them so the left is responding with violence, but they don't use guns, at least not as many as the right might have. The right has guns. You have the right that's basically putting up with this because they have this tolerance for bullshit. That's a problem. Because you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Now,
I think at this point, much like what's going on in the UK, our government has basically abandoned the will of the people, and they're trying to squiggle out of the biggest democratic vote in British history, which was Brexit. And the politicians are politicking because none of them want to leave, right? So there's the will of the people, and then there's the will of Parliament. And because we don't have a constitution, our constitution basically dictates that Parliament is sovereign. We're going to get whatever they can pass in Parliament, and 2/3 of them don't want to leave the EU to begin with. Now, we don't have guns, right? Otherwise, it might be a very different country, right? Also, right. The British people are very stiff upper lip, very polite. They're not like the French. The French love a revolution. They don't like an invader. They tend to collapse when it's external, but they do love a revolution. And France right now is burning, right? So tear gas, fires, explosions, and all this kind of stuff, right? The Brits are not like that. The Brits, they're going to be very polite until the last. So our first response is going to be probably what very much the right conservative is at the ballot box. So out here, the conservatives are in power and they're fucking up the Brexit program. In May, we have local elections for our local councils. And it looks pretty clear that the conservatives are going to lose tremendously. And this is the people are speaking like, we are tired of your shit. Because we don't have a general election, at least for another 2 years, I think, for the parliament and stuff like that. So that's how it's going to start. And I think the Americans are probably going to follow suit. The conservatives don't want to be violent. I mean, you always get crazies on all spectrums. But it's going to be political. So the next battlefront will be 2020, right? Trump's re-election campaign.
Right.
Which so far, given what I've seen, it looks like he's going to win it.
Yep.
Right. I mean, but this is early days. We don't know what's going on. Now, if the left loses again, and if possibly the Republicans take back the House, and I think they'll lose their shit. I think then they will, the left, will lose their shit. The right will use the means that they have, and the left will lose their shit. And if it ever comes to violence, it's going to be off of that. It's when the democratic process has failed. That's when you'll see violence. You don't have that yet, but it's coming. It could come. It could come. Yeah. The Brits do the same thing. We have a lot of protests outside Parliament right now. And there's a lot of talk of Guy Fawkes. He was, this guy who wanted to blow up the Parliament building November 5th. So there's a lot of that language going around, and the police are warning people, watch your words on Twitter, we'll show up at your house and all this shit. But yeah, people are pissed on both sides because nobody's getting what they want. So yeah, it could get very interesting.
Brian Monroe in the chat here. I hope that the conservative British people know that soon they will not have the numbers to get their will at the ballot box. Yeah. Well, you know about that.
Yeah, I mean the conservatives aren't conservative, so the liberal Democrats are not liberal or democratic, and Labour has now turned from Labour to socialist, well, almost communist. So all of the parties are pretty much fucked. UKIP that's a whole other story. The Brexit Party, which is Nigel Farage's new party. If you were so interested in fighting for Brexit, why did you leave politics at that time? Right? So
I mean, maybe he felt he would have a lot more influence having the mobility to.
No, he wanted money. He wanted money. He's been in politics for so long.
I mean, he is a capitalist too, so.
Yeah. He left his position. He got a sponsorship or affiliate with Fox. He got a radio show, and now he's talking about the revolution and stuff like that. And what Brian is really talking about is the demographic shifts of population. So the white British is it's not a minority yet, but it's becoming a minority because of the amount of mass immigration, as well as a lot of these migrants are having lots of kids. And the conservatives are blind to this. They don't understand that, yes, the white British tend to vote conservative. If you want to remain conservative, just like the Republicans in the US, it tends to be white working class Americans, straight Christian gun-faring, tend to vote Republicans. If they don't understand the demographics game, it's a losing battle. But I think we're a couple of years out from that being the issue. The immediate issue is that these parties have no connection to the will of the people. And I think in this day of social media and, people know what's going on, it's becoming more and more apparent that these people are more and more useless. And we need to start kind of, putting some restraints on what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's... You guys got to get out of the EU, man. Like,
we have a lot of work to do. Yeah, getting out of the EU is part one. Getting a constitution to restrain Parliament is part two, and so on and so on. We need, as I said, we don't have free speech. We don't have the right to protect ourselves. It's the Parliament has gone crazy in terms of what they've done to this country. And especially now, like we recently had up in Newcastle two Congolese gentlemen, I believe, doing a full-on machete battle in the middle of the high street, caught on camera. Ooh. And it's like, how's that diversity working out for you? Is that working out for you guys up there? That's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, that's a thing. Again, I talked about this last week, and I've talked about this again, is demographic shift tends to be such a touchy topic, especially for libertarians, because a lot of libertarians tend to hold a very open border policy. But in the context of they talk about statist all day. It's like, yeah, but we live in a very statist world. Correct. State runs a lot of things. So you need to consider that there are larger themes at play here. And when you are in a place that has a demographic shift, shit happens. I mean, it's not like they get afraid because they think, racism or whatever. And it's like, no, it's culture. It's a very different things. You have cultures of, I mean, not even to go too far. Let's say, even certain aspects of, I don't know, we'll just say Hispanic culture that we tend to see down near the border might not be as socially, people not be socially as comfortable with that up north.
Probably.
But that up in northern states in the States isn't necessarily mean that's, they're wrong or whatever. No, but it's a different thing. And when you dial up that just the social consciousness, how it reacts to difference. You have to consider the fact that it's going to make changes, that it can cause problems. Is it to say cultures are problematic? Is it to say people, races are problematic? Obviously not. It's to show just we're still very much driven by, as humans, we're very much wanting a level of um, conformity, or just just there is a sense of wanting something homogenous.
I agree.
I mean, diversity is good. I'm not denying that, but too much diversity too quickly can be a problem.
It's this is how Douglas Murray, he is I guess a political commentator. He's a homosexual as well. Very big guy in the UK, speaks throughout Europe and stuff like that. And he basically put it like this: that, okay, great. So we opened the doors of the UK. Basically, Tony Blair did this, and he kind of invited bits of the third world because this mantra, diversity is our strength. All right, so great. So what do we end up with? We end up with okay, some kebab shops. You can get some Congolese food and all these other types of things, right? Okay, great. So we've gotten some new delicacies. But is the country really any better off with more kebab shops? Like, every kebab shop is really enriching the society to the point where we need that? And he says, no, I think people's rejection of this diversity is not because we haven't had enough of it. It's because we've had too much and we're kind of getting sick of it. Mm-hmm. And there was a fantastic study done by a gentleman out of Harvard. I can't remember his name. He was a very pro-diversity guy. And he did his study on diversity and found the complete opposite is true. That if you have too much diversity in one particular area, what you get is riots, no sense of camaraderie. Camaraderie, right? Thank you. You get no sense of identity, and there's just disunity. In fact, he was so upset by the findings, he sat on it for 5 years. He said the only place where that works, diversity, is if there is a common goal. So you say you look at the military, the US, or any voluntary service. You will have a very diverse population, but you are fixated on a common goal.
Yeah, that's the thing is I've heard, because when I talk about things with demographic shift, I one thing with libertarians is you do have a lot of former military servicemen. Yeah. So they tend to think, well, I got along just fine. That's no problem. I said, you had now I'm hearing you say this. It makes more sense now. They have the common goal: defeat the enemy and take care of the guy next to you. Don't die. Those are very clear goals, and then once you achieve those, you have camaraderie and an identity that builds through that. It's not I'm a black man, it's I'm a soldier, I'm a Marine, I'm a Navy man, I'm all this. And correct. We don't have, unless you want I was actually talking about this with someone, you want Starship Troopers.
right
where everyone's goal is to defend the planet.
You would get unity. Yeah.
You will get like a unity that is just easily achieved. But the
US, it sounds terrible. The Cold War was one of the most unifying things for the United States. Well, for the West in general.
Well, just the moon landing too.
Yes, the moon landing definitely. I think that kind of united the world for a couple hours. Because that was a huge monumental achievement. Definitely give props to that. But the Cold War, having this enemy, the communists, the Reds, at least in America, that was probably a very patriotic and unifying time. The Vietnam War is kind of when that fabric really started to come apart for the US. Right? So it was the draft, and you were losing the war, and all this other kinds of stuff. And that's what's been decayed. That's the US no longer has that unifying vision of the city on the hill and the great experiment, and the only thing that still kind of remains in the US is business, right? It's still seen as the land of opportunity. So you go to the US to get rich, right? which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that as a culture. In fact, it might work out better than most other places. But for those of us in Europe, the UK, Germany, all these other places, there is such a backlash on what it means to be British or even English, or what it means to be a Scotsman. The Scots have still kind of held on to their identity a lot more than the English.
Right.
The Welsh have done a good job of it. The Irish have done a very good job of it. You don't see a lot of people referring to themselves as Englishmen, right? Because there's all, the colonialism stuff and all the guilt and all that other nonsense. But because of that, because we haven't been educated on these things at the state level, that unifying, culture which holds the union as well as, the cohesion of neighborhoods and other things, that's disappearing. And you're seeing these ghettoized neighborhoods and no-go zones. And of course, the political class has never had to deal with basically cultures that are more dominant. Like if we're importing people from war-torn Syria, for instance, these are people who have lived their entire life in a war zone with violence, all of these kinds of things. And you come and drop them into London, which they've never had to integrate and all these other types of things. And many times, sometimes they don't. They have their own little communities and stuff like that. But this is the thing. You're taking somebody who's come from a culture of excessive violence and you're expecting them, just to breathe the air here and suddenly become British without kind of any, integration training or any of those types of things. That's dangerous. That is exceedingly
and that unfortunately, I think, to even have this conversation is seen as controversial in itself. We're talking about it from a stance of like, just, hey, like, here's some studies, here's some things, here's a problem. And it's so close to the identitarian and nationalistic ideas that it gets kind of muddied, and people are just afraid to even talk about it at the fear of being seen as a racist or something, or some bigot. And then what happens is, like you said, the suppression of speech turns to extremism. Because we talked about this a long time ago when we first started doing the show. It's just the most extreme views on this topic become the loudest when you start to suppress anything, even minorly talking about it. Talking about just saying the word demographic shift is like enough to get you in trouble.
Oh, especially out here.
Yeah, just saying the shift. Yeah, it's a phenomenon. It's like, it's hey, certain people of certain groups are shifting in terms of how many of each are, broken down in an area. Ooh, that's racist. It's like, no, that's monitoring populations' movements.
Yeah, exactly. Even
and seeing the social effects of that.
And I think this is what the political class is what's really doing this to all our countries. In the UK, Labour understands that they really don't have, Labour basically is our Democrats. Labour doesn't have a chance in hell unless they get younger voters to vote for them, because nobody else is buying their bullshit.
Right.
So there's a push right now to drop the voting age from, I believe, 18 to 16 and below. Right? Because why? Because that's the only way they're going to get in. In the US, it is the minorities and the Latino community, the Black community and stuff like that are very strong for the Democratic Party. And they understand the same thing, that in order for them to ever really regain control, they need to make as many migrants, Latin, Mexican migrants, legal and able to vote to give the Democrats a chance.
What was it? The the push now that voter ID laws are racist.
Yeah. Because the poor simple brown person or person of color doesn't have enough intelligence to get an ID card. Poor them.
Soft bigotry. Yeah,
soft bigotry of low expectations. Exactly.
Amy Horowitz did a whole video on this where you've seen him. Was it Amy out out and, or something gets called out and about or on the road, he basically just goes out and he just asks questions. So he goes to a bunch of white people, finds a bunch of white people. What do you think of voter IDs? Oh, I think it's racist and this and that. Well, why is it racist? Well, because, you know, they're in certain neighborhoods and it puts undue stress on them to try to, like, you know, have to get an ID and all this. And it's very racist. And then so he goes, okay. So he takes all that info, goes to talk to a bunch of black people. What do you think about voter ID laws? I think it's fine. So what do you think about white people who say this and this and this? Did they say that? Really? People say that? Like, they're like, really? They think we're too poor to get IDs?
Yeah. It is absolute nonsense. And it is, as you say, it is unfortunately these progressive middle class to upper class white people. It has nothing to do with voter IDs. It has everything with fighting for the demographics. They're playing the long game. Like, some people believe there's a long game being played out here in the UK with certain demographics out here that are going to outbreed. And to transform the country, they're just going to have a lot of kids. That's a long game. The problem with politics is that it's not a long game; it's a short game. It's 2 years, 5 years, right? Like, China has 100-year plan, right? They're going to be ruling the world in 100 years. The West, because of our political system and everything else, they don't understand the long game. They can't think that far. They think to the next election.
Yeah, a 260-year-old country probably doesn't have much for a long game, which can be a good thing. But then you got places like China, 5,000 years of history. They're going to play the long game.
Yeah.
What's another 100 years, you know?
Yeah. It's like the Muslim community and stuff like that. They're looking at the Ottoman Empire and, all of that. Yeah. Recently there was calls from, I can't remember who it was, demanding the King of Spain apologize for, basically exiling the Muslims from Spain, right? I think the Second Crusade. But the whole point that the Muslims got there was because they took it by force, right? So they were first invaders, and they basically occupied the land. The Crusaders came in, pushed them out, but somehow the Muslims are the victims in this.
I've heard in some cases they don't even call it the Crusades; they call it the Reconquest.
It was. The Crusades were the response after 400 years of Muslim aggression. But then again, this is what I keep saying: the Muslims are playing the long game. Right, that culture understands the long game. The West does not understand the long game, which is why you bring up the Crusades, you bring up slavery, you bring up all these other things, and they don't know how to react to it. They go on an apology tour, right? Because their thinking is not like that. The West is very individualistic, here and now sort of thing. But you're dealing with very different cultures, and they don't understand the long game.
Here we go. We got some more comments here from Brian Monroe. Time is racist. Yep.
I saw that article.
That whole thing. Yeah, time is racist because the idea of keeping time, I don't know, some sort of Western construct.
Well, it's POC. People of color tend to be late, right? So, like, I know in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago, we had Trini time. So you tell everybody you want to meet at a certain time, and then people show up like an hour later, right? And in the work world, you're penalized for that. You show up an hour late, you're not paid for that and stuff like that. So this lady is basically saying that is draconian, white supremacist, whatever, because people have their own time. What you can't force them to do all these other kinds of things. And that, again, soft bigotry of low expectations. Not all people of color can't keep time. Not like they can't be on time to an event and keep a job and do all these other types of things. You're special pleading for a bad behavior and you're trying to reward it somehow. That's never going to be a winning strategy.
Oh man, the world we live in.
It is literally insane, and this garbage is coming out from universities. Like I saw recently that this shocked the hell out of me, and I'm probably going to short the stock. Shell, the oil producer Shell, is pulling out of the climate lobby. like the energy lobby, because some of the executives agree with the Paris Climate Accord. So they're no longer going to be lobbying for more incentives for their own business. They're no longer going to be siding with legislation that keeps their business alive, right? And they're now going to be siding with with legislation that seeks to take them out of business. This is the dumbest thing that I have ever seen. So only a progressive could come up with this type of nonsense and push this from the heights of power.
Trying to dismantle their own market?
They're trying to regulate and destroy their own market. I mean, Shell is an oil producer and an energy producer. They used to contribute towards the climate lobby, to basically keep legislation and regulations light so they can produce and whatever. They're no longer going to do that. And they say that they agree with the assessments of the Paris Climate Accord, which, by the way, no country that has signed the Paris Climate Accord has kept to the accord, right? The only country that has actually reduced emissions, and I'm not even convinced that's necessarily a good thing, but the only country that's actually done it has been the United States of America. And they aren't.
That's the thing. I was talking about that too with some people about how, like, people don't understand the sort of development, the idea of countries developing. In the next couple decades, we're going to have multiple nations hit an industrial revolution.
Yes.
And there is no Paris Accords that's going to stop that.
Well, I mean, this is why Trump didn't sign it, because it does nothing for India and China.
Yeah, I I remember so some of my family back in Taiwan talked about meeting Chinese people, and this was a serious question. So have you seen the sky?
Yeah.
What? And you're talking here to us Americans about fucking, trying to control emissions. Granted, right now it's not so clear out, but there are. I can see the sky on a fairly regular basis. I can get sunshine. I can get all that. There's a lot of parts of China you don't get that ever anymore.
Yeah, the coal, because most of their power right now is coming from coal power plants. They actually had to shut down the plants for the Beijing Olympics so that it would look like, it's beautiful. But you could see the smog reports and stuff like that. It's absolutely disgusting. And granted, go ahead.
Yeah, I've seen. So I was on this Ferris wheel in Taiwan when I was growing up, and we'd go to the tops, and we would see the Taipei 101, and we would also see the layers in the air. So there was like an irregular air layer. There'd be like a smog layer, a pollution layer, and then here's a fun one. There'd be a sand layer from the Gobi Desert that'd make it all the way down.
Right. Yeah.
So you would it'd be like looking at a cross section of dirt of the ground in the air.
Yeah.
You could still see the sky in Taiwan, but it's like this is air coming from China.
Exactly. And this is the big, and I'm sure this was the point that you made with the people you were talking to. That is reminiscent of Britain in the 1900s.
Like, or the US.
Or the US at the turn of, in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution started in Britain. And if you were to take somebody from 1900 and bring them to London today, their first comment will be, "Oh my God, it is so clean." Because back then, not only, there was sewage, there was horse shit, there was smog from all of the plants. It was filthy, right? You used to shove kids up inside the chimneys to clean them out. It was, it was mayhem, right? So people who are talking about pollution have no clue what the fuck they're talking about.
The car, which is, this huge, greenhouse gas contributor, was one of the first real innovations to sort of clear real problems in the city. I think,
I
think there was this, you can look back at like studies, but basically tallies of how much shit had to be like cleared from the streets of like cities like New York.
Yes.
With all the horses, because horses were as common as cars, if not more common.
Correct.
And all this shit they had to clear out all the fucking time. Now cars come in, you solve your shit problem.
Correct. And cars today are so efficient, and it's all global warming shit, this, that, the other, carbon emissions, whatever. They're so clean now. Again, we don't really have major smog problems, like back in the Industrial Revolution. And what India and China are going through right now, they have to go through that stage in order to produce enough wealth to seek cheap, literally more expensive forms of energy. Right? So coal right now, I think, still remains one of the cheapest. It's the quickest to build, the quickest to supply. It is the most pollutant, right? The US, how the US basically have done it, because of shale, they have now switched to natural gas. So natural gas is the natural progression on from these coal and oil furnaces. Natural gas has less carbon just in the molecule and so on. That's how the US has done it. The US has done it by shifting to natural gas. But that's more expensive because fracking is the crack spread on a fracking gas thing is probably like $50 per cube, $50 a cubic, whatever the unit is for the gas. So if they don't have at least $50 in price, you can't really extract it without a profit. But you could get coal at like $3 a pound or whatever, $3 a kilogram or whatever the thing is. It's dirt cheap. So until China and India get richer, they can't afford clean energy. Africa can't afford clean energy, right? Yeah. And every time they try to build a
that's
plant,
what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
In the next couple of decades, when Africa hits an industrial revolution.
yeah. And I mean, I don't think there's much of an industrial revolution left.
Well, not globalization. More so just industrialization, I should say.
Yeah. It's going to be like what because they haven't been able to industrialize Africa, the African continent. They haven't been permitted to really build infrastructure and energy, and we need energy. Energy is our defense against entropy, right? Everything's decaying. You need energy to fight back and basically push back the harsh environment. And every time they try to build a power plant, a bunch of white liberal environmentalist commies show up with their placards and basically see, no, don't do that, environment, Mother Earth, ooh, and that sort of shit, right? And it's not what the Africans want. Africa wants to develop.
They want financial independence, really.
Yeah, they want access to markets. They want free enterprise. Like if Africa could get past the European Union trading bloc and actually export their bananas and their agriculture into Europe without hitting it with a 20% more tariff, it would revolutionize the continent. But that means that the farmers in Greece, Italy, Portugal, Spain, elsewhere, they actually have to compete. Right? They might have to maybe be a little more efficient, and maybe they might have to switch to more profitable crops. They might actually have to work harder. And that's what the Europeans don't want,
Right. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see what really happens in the next. Yeah. Got to get those what is it, those bags from Andrew Yang.
The Yang Gang.
Well, yeah, now they say it's all about bags of money. It's getting my bags. And that's the saying. It's Yang Gang, it's my bags, it's robots taking over. I mean, he's constantly his campaign, they're constantly, like, social media wise, posting a bunch of videos of robots that are being invented now that are easy to produce, that are basically taking over human jobs. There's robots that can do pretty much majority of the farming you got to do. Mm-hmm. There's robots that, obviously there's the self-driving, there's just everything. Yeah.
Baxter. I posted this a couple, well, maybe 3 or 4 years ago on my Facebook. And I said, you're going to be hearing, like, the prediction going forward was going to be robotics, shale technology, and something else which I can't remember what I was talking about. But the backstory was the robotics, and it was programmable by actually moving it. So, like, if you had somebody who had to fry burgers, for instance, and it's a scoop flip over kind of movement, you literally just take the hands of the robot and you do it, and that programs it to do whatever task it had to do, and then you leave it, and it would just continue to do that sort of thing. But yeah, the robotics thing is definitely huge. I don't know if it's going to be as impactful in the near term as people are making it out to be to justify UBI, but it's interesting because I think we'll quicker get rid of minimum wage laws than introduce UBI. I think that's our last stand against the automation.
I'm thinking what would be so interesting about well, again, my utopian post scarcity world of Star Trek. What do they have? I mean, it's funny. They talk about money like so the Federation doesn't actually have money.
Yeah.
So so they say. Yet they all kind of still have money. So if you watch certain series, you'll hear them like, "Oh, I bought this."
Oh, right,
or
right.
or they'll say so Deep Space Nine, they talk about like the Ferengi.
Yeah.
Those, the officers will actually have Ferengi's money, which is gold pressed latinum, the little pieces of gold. They'll have that.
Yeah.
They'll gamble with it. They'll pay with it. And I'm like, the hell is this shit?
I don't know if you saw Ben Shapiro, his Sunday special with
I haven't
Yang.
seen it yet. That was
How does
today.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I think it came out today. But the one point that he did make that I was very interested in, but and we heard it on the Joe Rogan podcast as well. Everybody is romanticizing this UBI, like, oh yeah, it's going to set you free to pursue your passions, and everybody's going to be an artist and a poet. Right. And it's like, listen, there are people who are receiving welfare checks now, and they're not writing best-selling novels, and they're not, painting, Glasgow's or Picasso's in their spare time. What makes you think that, just giving people money is going to set them free to pursue their passions when there's a massive welfare state, and that's just not the case. And I don't know about, I didn't get to that part in it yet because I'm still going through it, but that's a truth. That is a truth. That a very big part of our drive, especially as men, work kind of defines our passion, or at least what we want to pursue.
Yeah, dude. I mean, me not working right now is like, on one hand, oh yeah, if I'm not working, I'm just granted, I have to really motivate myself to do things.
Sure.
I'm really like, so I told you, like, there was that 3-week period I wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I was like really pushing myself to crank out more articles and such to write for Think Liberty and Being Libertarian. And but still was like really forced. And it's like it kind of flies in the face of the, I'll just be here, I'll go buy a canvas, I'll just be painting.
You'll start a blog.
Or I'll start making like the most top quality YouTube videos I've ever made in my life. It's like, no, I mean, you need, and this even like is kind of flies in the face of like even some like ANCAP idealists is, we need some sense of order in our life to direct us to do something.
Correct.
And in the midst of that, it forces us to then find the time to pursue greater ambitions. So you need a job to make money that keeps your mind in a certain place. Then you go further to like pursue an ambition, pursue a cause you might have.
Correct.
Yeah, you give everyone money who aren't working. It's just not going to be the same. I mean,
I agree.
Even like the richest people, you can find out there. Excuse me. Even they are like, they have to keep busy.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe Rogan had another guy on. He had Kevin Hart, the comedian, on. And Kevin's like, I still have to work every day, no days off.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Like you got millions. Yeah, still got to work, still got to do things.
And this is what I don't think people like Andrew Yang and others who propose this thing, they don't understand that the entrepreneurial class, the people who are driven to like
Well,
really
he is
pursue
part of the
excellence.
entrepreneurial class, which is
Yeah,
funny.
this is his problem. He is part of the entrepreneur, but he thinks everyone is part of the entrepreneurial class.
Oh, like everyone would just has that inherent entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying is that no, that's actually very rare. Ludwig von Mises kind of pointed out, and the Austrian school is probably the only economic school that points out that entrepreneurship is a resource and should be fostered because that is what drives innovation, competition, new businesses, creates jobs, etc., etc. And it is rare. It is not something that is common. Not everybody has a big dream, but not everybody's going to pick their ass up and actually get shit done. Those people are rare.
Right.
And that's what UBI proponents don't seem to understand.
Well, that's also that's just why there's always going to be, not just as a term, there's always going to be the burger flippers.
Yeah. Yeah. And the pizza makers and the garbage men. And the garbage men are making more money than me right now with their unionized jobs. I should give up trading and become a garbage man,
Well, yeah, my job was making pretty good money too. But anyway.
Yeah, there you were. There we are. How we doing on time, man? I think we're getting up there.
We are actually just about there. So, anything quick you wanted to add before we get going? Oh, do you want to do that next weekend? That guest?
Which is? That might be a little short notice for him. So we'll keep that on the back burner until we could arrange something for sure. Because we're going to try him out on my stream first. So anybody who's listening, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to have a gentleman that works for a trading company, currency trading company, really good guy. He's one of my mentors. And people who might be looking for a side hustle, something that they can do on the side, this guy is going to come on and talk a little bit about his experience. And we should try and find people like that, Amos. People who, we're trying to speak to men. We're trying to speak to guys out there about being better. Mm-hmm. Let's see if we could find some people. Like maybe we got a couple of friends doing Amazon. Maybe we could get some of them to come and talk about how they're doing the Amazon thing. And that might become like a series that we do every so often.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, thanks everyone for joining us today. Definitely like, comment, and subscribe to this channel as well as Brook's channel. Follow both of us on social media. On Twitter, Brook is at Brook_Potter. I'm at Amos Joe. I will be on later tonight. What time? Let me see here. Crap. Here we go. It is 9 o'clock Eastern, so 8 o'clock Central Time. I will be on the Fighting the Void podcast with a couple of people. It's Fighting the Void. They're libertarian, but they do a lot of commentary as well, and similar to us through Google Hangouts, kind of across distances. There's a girl that went to Shane and Nico's wedding. Her name's Crystal. So Crystal,
from Happy Supremacy.
Right, Shane and Nico from Happy Supremacy. But Crystal, she's a writer, but she also does this podcast on the side. And I'd had kind of known her through Shane and Nico and stuff, and she's seen our podcast and wanted to have me on. So I'll be on there tonight talking about primarily like libertarianism versus the Libertarian Party. I'll definitely kind of jump around. I'm probably going to touch on like I've talked about this crutch of the libertarians where they hold so dearly to the individual, they can't really talk much about groups or trends or anything. Anyways, so yeah, I'll be on that. Definitely go check that out. Look them up on Twitter. They're posting constantly about that. So, So thanks everyone for joining us. And we will, of course, see everyone next week at our regular time, Sunday at noon Central Time. So.
And at 6 p.m. British summertime.
No, well, wait, you guys had your.
We had our daylight savings,
so we might move it back to 11. We'll see. We'll let everyone know. So, thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for watching, guys.